This is Dr. Justina Agnieszka Chevalier. This is the culminating video, and before I started, I would like to remark on gay relationships. Gay relationships have been also a subject of causing death and attacks on persons, and that is because often the persons were approached for unwanted relationships and in love with someone else, that these relationships resulted in remembrance of sexual rejections of a person that wanted that sex and children and or had them, and in resentment afterwards created that pain index that causes rejoicing in somebody else's harm, rationalization when that is present, typical to persons who are like I in celibacy because of medical training. And that is what I am trying to also improve in this series, enabling these videos to understand that when there is no need for imposing impediments to own relationships for all of us, there is no need for anyone to do so, and level of tolerance to any human or animal suffering becomes that of a compassionate rejection. So in seeing pain, we then feel nausea, and we feel compelled to actually assist, and in a not state of mind similar to a robot. And see, that is also something that I need you to listen to these lectures and learn that is normal for all physicians for as long as there is a life threat, and derived from the need to compensate for lack of presented in its knowledge. And so that is pertinent to gay relationships in such way that persons were indeed in love with someone for life. That was in DSM, just like the rest of terms, denominated as disease. And in absence of possibility of pursuit sexually that preferred opposite gender partners, especially from early years, persons would pursue a partner based on the pain index of resentment when the other one rejected, imposing, such as for instance rejection because there was a social need for remediation in form of assistance to others or education, imposed in hatred from that pain index, remembering those rejections or aspiring for somebody's sex and love, especially in opposite to gender nature. So aspiring for love and sex of a man who does not try to win over presenting self as best or as fodder material, but in degradation or sexual degradation in culture. And that is from that it became then impossible for a person to actually pursue that relationship in own rationalization when the pain is seen of that person, unlike basic instinct-based relationship that wants and is concerned from afar with well-being of a person in anxiety, and then also resulted in pursuit of non-well-being and or in resentment for past harm of person of the same gender, specific one. And because that person was loved most in the world usually, and it was for two, that came down to become also often in no realization of empirical reciprocity and the power of that described in Hexa method and drugless mind expansion, the power of being loved and loving, that is a cause described, for instance, in case of Aline Woolrose, of lashing out when a pursuit of a child is in sexuality present, and also in self-defense impeded by marking someone as bad because of that love lived in the past, and having person who pursues the same gender roommate, some gender habits, and intense and profound adoration towards especially non-familiar same gender person, meaning non-related one, and love that consists of love that is in nature compassionate and extremely satisfying, in a bond to live together, or in the past the same degree and same pain that is then source of seeing own pain and harm in the other person, and deep emotional being moved by that, and having then the reciprocity in the same, expressed in intimacy, sexual intimacy, that is in its dimension sacred and leads to such bond. And that is a relationship, a gay relationship, that needs to be understood, where also the pursuit of breaking persons apart and the risks of that relationship strive from. It is the same as other terms. There is no illness in that, being living maximum relationship and experiencing primal betrayal from person based on excuses, in need of work, rejecting any sort of sexuality, while the other one pursues it, and especially in role reversed roles, while insinuating that it is wanted and rejecting that results in social ostracism and intends to kill. That results in deep, profound disgust for those persons from family and opposite gender partner, even though that person was truly loved, and women often against own even judgment pursue that sexual activity, provoking and trying that husband to behave as a husband and promoting that husband. And then when there are proofs that that person pursued harm in physical violence or in betrayal outside, so no more basic instinct, becoming to that person in fear of being pursued again, well, usually a stranger, and pursue of equal relationships. And so these are often, when they appear, relationship with the opposite gender, inferior in an assumption of fault of a person who in fact is expected to wait to be pursued sexually, and when that does not occur, sits and does not know what to do, and when pursuing a man sexually is rejected and labeled as evil, bad, and inherently rejected even more so, or harmed based on excuses and accusations that are at core of racism. We need to remember that, and family violence as well. All of that material, drugless mind expansion, the hexa method, and that spreadsheet will allow you to know who is and who is not safe relationship as a potential. When it comes to gay relationships, they are deeply satisfying if three criteria are met. First one, persons, as described in the drugless mind expansion, at least once in life establish non-faultful and non-relative to presence or absence of reciprocity mind state in lived maturation of an intensity where sex is source of child and self-esteem in self, and deep, profound, exclusive love for another, that lived and experience as yearning in sexual acts for a child in orgasm, a mutual one, esteem from that expressed in willingness to marry, and wanting most in the world that child in a couple, that couples who experience that in mind or in mind-body continuum, each when that is impeded by betrayal, and the person actually is unable to not try to harm the other one, and the other one is not at fault because that basic instinct was soured, and soured usually by rejection, especially of women by men, while provoking, calling them sick, stupid, or incompetent, when the person actually loves the other one, in non-stop accusation, in non-understanding of overcoming and how sexual maturation is formed. And so the knowledge, empirical maturity for men and women is necessary. That's one. Second aspect that is necessary for forming a gay relationship is that there is no partner anymore. That in fact in mind-body continuum is not cause of inferior love derived from sexual desire intrinsic to capacity to give an offspring that has emotional and physical translation in pursuit of that person and pursue of person of same gender because of resemblance to that person, or a seemingly incapacity to share that person because possessive love makes the two rival. So as opposed to being against one another in fear of harming the same gender person, pursuit of sex with the other person, where source is pursuit of search of characteristics of that person, opposite gender one, and when that person pursues impersonating usually and evoking on when male a mother and when female brother, father, or other family figure. And that you need to know that the source of aggression towards it and all those movements that are gay are because persons in mind and in body, often as physical impressions, live as if it was a couple who does not pursue children and treats sex as a remediative only. In mind live unwanted sexual perceptions and in profound sense of fear of rejection, and being in participating in mind in sexual activity of the same gender person as source of it, lived as dreams or conscious and non-conscious visions when that those persons pursue that relationship. People actually assume the role of a loved person, and when that person appears based on a basic index, pain index and basic instinct, actually fight that sexual partner that happened in the monster, this loyalty that two women or two men are not possible to understand on sex based on sex, and pursuit of a child. And so that is instinctive, and you need to know, because I've witnessed that at least a few times actually, and once was in context of police work in Los Angeles, that men that work for police, same as women, are not toys, and the same is true for soldiers, physicians, and nurses. And that means that it is not okay to, as a boss of such person, to send that person with assumption of impediment to use that person to work, of pursuit of relationship, and so that force that person in the role of a perpetrator to in fact love on sexual basic instinct in potential one of these women, that causes originally a fight between, for instance, two women if it's a man, and then when that man arrives calming down because that person came back, and assumption of role of an adult mature female, and contemptful in some way, a rationalized also attitude to the other one that is resolved later on by lengthful explanations, and again that sexuality that is derived from also well, assuming and playing a role of a man, or having a third one as source of it. And again, that is because of deep and memories and deep profound perception and remembrance of self being at the risk of death or in pain, and indifference or pursuit of homicide, pursuit of suicide, or pursuit of the miss of a person, because that person rejected based on basic instinct, impeded or encouraged others to kill, die, or framed from that person, imposing in such accusations, person fighting back against persons from childhood and friends. And that is what happens a lot in the United States, for instance, as well as in Jewish communities. And so you need to understand that overcoming is true, but when persons, for instance, assume first the role of a partner, sexual and a romantic one, and then accuse non-stop of deeper love towards persons from immature years that are loved but are not loved sexually, and that is the and then the source of that anger, and that anger is carried from jealousy of a person of a different origins, also different race, on persons of same race, and profound hatred and racism. So that needs to be explained and stopped. In a non-relationship to others is what one feels in mind and body, and then in corroboration of reciprocity.